The world is full of unusual dishes that might seem strange to some people. Ordinary food from one part of the world may seem disgusting to people on another continent, and dishes that some people eat every day can seem crazy or just inedible to others. Of course, the people thinking they're crazy might not be wrong, since some of the food I'm about to show you can quite literally kill you.
My question is, what the hell?
Are you brave enough to try these curious bites? Well, let's find out. Live octopus. Octopus is a staple on a lot of menus, like calamari but tastier. However, the South Koreans do it slightly differently. They eat their octopus alive. That alone sounds like a horror show, and you wouldn't be wrong in thinking that, because it can definitely kill you. The powerful octopus suckers can get stuck to the inside of your throat and block your airway until you suffocate to death. People still do it though, even famously on camera in the Korean film Oldboy. However, other people who have tried it on camera didn't do quite as elegantly as the actor in that film. It's not as easy as it looks, as this Chinese blogger found out during a live stream. Take a look. Fugu. When you think of food, you'll almost never think of the word deadly, but you might need to add that word to the list if you're visiting Japan. Fugu is an expensive delicacy at the top restaurants in Tokyo, and it can kill you almost instantly. It's actually pufferfish, which contains life-threatening tetrodotoxin poison.
We have reason to believe you have eaten poison. Poison?
There is no antidote. When eating this fish, you are putting your life in the hands of a specially trained chef. The brains, eyes, skin, and even the highly toxic liver are cautiously removed by chefs. If even a tiny piece of a deadly organ is left behind, let's just say it won't be a very pleasant experience. It must be pretty delicious to be worth that risk. Fesik. Risking your life for something delicious is one thing, but what about risking your life for something rotting? Well, every year in spring, the Egyptian Ministry of Health issues a warning against the traditional Egyptian delicacy, fesik, but people keep eating it anyway. So what is this irresistible dish? Stinking fermented fish. The tradition dates back thousands of years to the days of the pharaohs. These days, however, the fermentation process is meant to be controlled more carefully, but the dish is often prepared incorrectly, and the mullet fish end up rotting, and that's when they get dangerous. It seems you can't tell the difference between correctly paired fesik and rotten fish, because loads of people eat the wrong one every year and get incredibly sick. The rotting fish gives you botulism poisoning, which is just as terrible as it sounds. The illness causes the symptoms you would expect from eating rotten fish, like cramps and vomiting, but it can also cause breathing problems too.
What did you say?
Why would anyone risk paralysis and death to eat rotten fish remains a mystery. Giant isopod. Have you ever seen a sea creature and felt like they definitely live on the bottom of the ocean for a reason? Giant isopods are one of those creatures. They look like a cross between a cockroach and a lobster, but they can grow to a terrifying size of 2 feet. They can eerily live for years without food, but really they're scavengers who eat all the rotting, dead sea creatures that float down to the ocean floor. Sound appetizing?
No, God!
Well, despite what you just heard, Japanese people have decided they're worth eating and have been munching down on these creepy creatures for years now. It's not a very common dish, but even one person eating these sea cockroaches seems like too many, especially when you hear that to make these sea bugs edible, you need to remove their stomach, which is full of rotting sea flesh that they found on the seafloor, and apparently it smells absolutely revolting. Some say it tastes like crab or prawn, while others say it's more like chicken, but none of that makes it sound worthwhile eating something that looks like it comes out of a horror movie. Kasumarzu. If you think you have a more sophisticated taste and plain old deep-fried insects aren't enough with you, why not pair them with cheese? But be warned, this isn't your ordinary cheese. In fact, it's surprisingly dangerous. It comes from Sardinia in Italy, and it's called Kasumarzu, literally meaning rotten cheese. But it's so much worse than you think. It's actually pecorino filled with maggots, and it's been banned due to its health risks. The Italians say it's worth it. It's apparently delicious, but what you're actually eating thing is the maggot excrement after they've eaten the rotting cheese, and that's what gives it its distinct flavor and soft texture. As if that's not disgusting enough, the cheese needs to be eaten with the live maggot still wriggling around inside it, as dead maggots are supposedly a sign that the cheese is no longer safe to eat. However, even with live maggots, the cheese comes with some safety tips. Firstly, it should be eaten with your eyes closed, not to avoid the sight of writhing maggots going into your mouth, but because when the maggots are startled, they can jump into your eyes. Secondly, it's important to chew thoroughly, because if you don't kill every maggot by mushing them up between your teeth, they can live inside you and rip holes through your insides.
Oh, hell no!
I personally think I'll give this one a skip. Stargazy pie. We all know you eat with your eyes, but what about when your food has eyes looking back at you?
No! I refuse. No! No.
In a village called Mousehole in England, their weird holiday dish called Stargazy pie does just that. It's a fish pie, which shouldn't really be strange at all, except they make it with the fish heads and tails poking out of the crust. It's been placed by the New York Daily News as one of the most disgusting things people can eat, ranking it 9th between dried lizards and snake whiskey. Today, the dish is prepared with 7 types of fish, while the stuffing consists of peeled fish, potatoes, bacon, boiled eggs, onions, and herbs. If fish heads sticking out of your meal sounds frightening, maybe a regular pie will suit you better. Shipworms. If the thought of wriggling worms can put you off your dinner, this may not be the dish for you. Tamalak is a Filipino delicacy, which makes it sound deceptively delicious until you find out its other name that it goes by, shipworms. These jiggly little creatures are found in rotting wood and die as soon as they're exposed to the air and sun, which makes them sound uncomfortably alien. They're not aliens though, but they aren't worms either. They're mollusks, so more like a slug than a worm. Once harvested from their decaying nests, they have to be prepared before you can eat them. So their heads, and you might be surprised to hear this word when talking about a worm, but their feet are ripped off and their insides are squeezed out like a tube of toothpaste. Then they're nice and clean, so they're served raw. It's basically a spicy, water-based slug noodle soup, and it's said to taste like slimy oysters or salty jelly. Fried insects. If sea bugs aren't your thing, you might want to try something a little more recognizable. You might not think you can eat insects, but it turns out you can have a bite of just about any one of them. And fried insects are actually a street food favorite in some parts of Asia, and they're very popular with tourists. They're also a great source of protein, but I doubt that would convince you to give these creepy crawlies a try. But even if you're not going to taste them yourself, you're almost certainly still interested in what they're like. But that's not an easy answer because each type of insect is unique, and there are a lot of them. It seems texture is just as important as taste. Caterpillars are soft and are sort of like eggs, while some other kinds of worms, like bamboo worms, are crunchy like popcorn, while crickets are described as super crunchy bits of chicken. The list of things to try is seemingly endless. Grasshoppers, small green frogs, cockroaches, or more expensive creatures like tarantulas and giant forest scorpions, none of which seem like they would go down well at a party. Jellied eels. As it turns out, England likes doing weird things with fish. Perhaps the most traditional dish in London is jellied eels. Unbelievably, it's exactly what it sounds like, eels in jelly. Eels are weird to begin with, slippery and wriggly creatures, and to chop them up and put them in jelly doesn't sound particularly appealing. It became popular back in the 18th century, when the River Thames, which runs through London, was just crawling with eels. They were cheap and easy to catch, so they ate them all the time. The jelly occurs on its own when you boil the eels in water and vinegar, which is usually flavored with lemon and nutmeg, and then leave it to get cold, which is how it's meant to be eaten. Its popularity is declining though, but I'll leave it to you to decide why. Deep fried maple leaves. This is a dish you can try in the Japanese city of Osaka, located on the Honshu Island. Japanese people have been eating fallen maple leaves as a treat since the 1300s, and this doesn't come as a surprise since the Japanese say that everything that's deep fried tastes much better, so why not deep fry a maple leaf? One city in particular, called Minot, seems to house the world's pro-leaf fryers, and their process is quite intensive. They collect huge amounts of particular types of maple leaves, but not those from branches, only ones that have already fallen, claiming the yellow ones are the best. Then they're thoroughly washed and salted in barrels for a year to preserve them. Then they dust off the salt the following season, rinse their leaves, dip each one in a sweetened tempura batter, and deep fry them one by one, all by hand, and with an amazing amount of attention given to each leaf. The result is a delicate and very pretty sweet bite made with something you would normally treat as garden rubble. Psst, hey, you still there? Well, since you made it this far, here are all the shoutouts we promised everyone that commented on our previous video. If you want to be shouted out in our next upcoming video as well as the ones prior, just make sure you're subscribed to the channel and leave a comment down below saying, "Pick me!" Once you're at it, you might as well leave a like too.